I'd like to add another layer to the conversation regarding dogmatism and seeing yourself almost as this distilled Archimedean point, and everything you've invested into that idea of yourself doesn't allow you to sort of have a conversation about new evidence that might be pertinent for you to sort of see another point of view. One overarching umbrella point of view that I would agree upon with the manosphere in terms of a looser grip would be that everything in the manosphere tends to be red pill, right? But everyone's talking from a very different specific point of view, and they're defending that point of view without being able to converse with quite objectively sensible points of view from other positions. And that's where we cage ourselves, gentlemen. That's where we isolate ourselves. And you isolate yourself in a group of very few men. All of a sudden, one or two of them leave. And you're not left in a good place. Because if you spat on everybody else and beat your chest that yours is the only right specific Archimedean point, and all the rest can go to hell, and all the rest are pussies, or manginas, or whatever else you want to call them. Unless we're all Siamese twins checking in with each other, after a while our angles shift and we're off each other's paths if we keep our eye off each other. And that kind of codependency I don't think is good for us to be sort of strong individuals. Like I always say, I think the healthier approach is to be cooperative and respectful and civilized with each other, and have a conversation, because what these very narrow cornered points of view do is that anyone who's not wedging into your corner gets kicked out. No one's allowed to disagree with you, and what will happen in those corners of just a few men will be that one man will be the alpha, if you want to use that word, that everyone will need to agree on. So the individual actually gets, whoa, the sun is bright. So every individual in that sort of little group starts to defend their individuality to such a degree that they start fighting against each other. As an example, I no longer see myself as defined within a particular narrow title or object any more than I was when I chose being a designer when I was in my late teens and early 20s. I am no more the fixed object of a title that I decided upon when I was that young, any more than I am the fixed title of the particular part of the manosphere that liberated me 5, 10, 15 or so years ago. That doesn't define me now, because you have to keep defending the investment you've placed into that Archimedean point of so long ago. And it's I know it's rooted in the honourable aspects of men, the reliability, the honour. I understand that. But if we have to be dogmatic and we can't let each other float off in different directions, we will find ourselves alone. And what I fear will happen is, as we drift away from each other in this competitive male arena, finding certainty in this kind of solitary space, the only thing we'll reflex back to when we find ourselves alone out there, bereft of being able to converse with each other, is relying on our natures, and that will slingshot us back to is women again. And what we'll find is that we'll attach ourselves to another woman because we're drowning in investing into old ideas and not conversing and being able to sort of talk with each other, with or without women, going off on tangential paths incrementally, slowly and slowly along the way, and still being able to talk to each other and tell each other what we find as we protract out on these paths. Because then the only adventure left is to go to another female, because that's the easy thing to do. If you venture so far that there's no human male, no friends, no brotherhood, no real tribe of men, even if they aren't exactly you, and nor should they be. If you've got no men that you can talk with, shoulder to shoulder with, again, as I've said many times, not behind or in front of, not within groups necessarily, unless they perfectly fit you. And what these groups actually do, when there's men in these groups that are much more confident, experienced, and along these paths more than you, they can provide mentorship to a certain degree until you find yourself along these paths, and you might diverge slightly and go along your own way. But I'm just very aware of guys short-circuiting their own development intellectually, individually, philosophically. Locking yourself up in safety, a lot of guys forget, at least this is how I see it, is Neo at the start of the movie in The Matrix, where he was locked in his room, safe from the world, and that guy knocked on his door and asked him to the club and said, hey man, maybe you need to unplug. So I think a lot of guys who cage themselves into little corners of the manosphere are actually plugging themselves back into a safe matrix. The point is to unplug and I don't know, start jumping buildings rationally. Bad metaphor, but you get my point. Acting tough is a gladiator's game, and we all know what happens when we compete at that kind of animal level with other men. There tends to only be one person left standing, and the spoils tend to be the damsel. Because you're tough, you know. There's no other competitor, and you're the tough guy that feels invincible. But most often, if you're not checked by other men, civilized other men, not the bullshit that's out there currently, not the bullshit that it's devolved into. Again, I'm not picking on MGTOW, I'm not picking on TFL, monks, FAs, or any of those guys. The sensible, mature, and intelligent guys in those arenas I can have conversations with, and the ones that I watch that are intelligent, that have self-reflected, they provide great insights to men that connect with them because they're in that particular spot where what they say and the experiences they've had resonate with them. The process of what we talk about and how we get to know ourselves psychologically and introspectively is the important stuff, because that's the stuff that can retain. That's the stuff that we can keep talking about moving forward. But if we talk in terms of objects, you know, I am this, I am FA, I am MGTOW, I am TFL, I am monk. You're grateful for the conversation of men that can understand you, what you've been through. But the moment you start colouring outside the lines, not because you want to be defiant, but because you're curious, you will get castigated by men's survival instincts to keep you with them. As many have described, it's like crabs in a bucket. They don't mean to, but like women have their nature, men have their nature in this context. Let go of your grip of who you are, you know, the title of who you are, the thing that you've been investing so much energy, time, and years into, that's dragging behind you like an anchor, gentlemen. Get rid of the Archimedean point of ourselves, the notion that we stay at this poker table of our identity and we can't just cash our chips in, like we so often talk about walking away from the table of women and walking away with the few chips you've got left. Do that with your own ideology and what you're defending that you may well need to leave and be able to sort of grow in conversation with other guys. Let's not isolate ourselves physically, gentlemen, because the next step is we isolate ourselves mentally, and what comes after that is no good for anyone. Anyway, I hope that was something to think about, gentlemen. I'll talk to you later.